This next question was sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Richard Horn. Can you discuss this?
Good old Dick Horn. I haven't heard from him in ages.
He says, you should discuss on the next program, and he sent an article here, the 8 cringiest moments of Kenny Omega's career. Have you seen this article?
I have not.
Would you care to give
But I'm all ears.
All right, well, let's go to this. The 8 cringiest...
Except for my gesticulating fingers and my twinkle toes. I'm all ears.
This is from the Sportster. Kenny Omega is one of the most divisive men in all of professional wrestling. By holding the AEW, Impact, and AAA world titles at the same time, he earned the moniker The Belt Collector. Among other accolades, he is also the first non-Japanese competitor to win the G1 Climax. To his fans, he is one of the greatest wrestlers alive. With an innovative style and moveset, as well as the way he has opened himself up to the fans via his gaming streams and starting Being the Elite with the Young Bucks. However, his detractors are many and vocal with their opinions. Legends such as Hall of Famer Harley Race calling his work unsafe during a training seminar, and many other legends claiming he refuses to learn. The most common critique of Kenny Omega is the damage he has done to the industry through the way he wrestles, as well as the more comedy antics and his openness on gaming and social media platforms Kenny is well known for. That was a weird ending sentence there, but let's go now to this list.
That was tortured syntax.
Number 8, the cringiest moments of Kenny Omega's career is a quote, "Listening to Jim Cornette is dangerous." If Kenny Omega is divisive, James E. Cornette is polarizing. Omega and Cornette have been engaged in a war of words for an age now, Cornette being the biggest critic of Omega. In a recent Twitch stream, Omega started shooting on, quote, old guys with podcasts, naming Cornette specifically, claiming it was not only concerning that people in the AEW locker room were listening to him, but also those higher up. Omega then expressed his...
Wait a minute, I'm sure it does concern him that some people higher up in that company actually listen to common sense. That would concern me if I was the biggest joke wrestler in the fucking company.
Omega then expressed his concern due to listening to Cornette. Wrestlers were wanting to stay safe. Ask any of his peers, his friends, and many enemies, and they will agree Jim Cornette is one of the greatest wrestling minds of the past 40 years, making Omega's talk of dangerous seem ignorant. A point raised by Dax Harwood in the Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor media scrum. So there's number 8, him saying that listening to you is dangerous, his cringiest moments.
I would say that taking into account their injured reserved list, working with anybody on that roster is a lot more dangerous than listening to me tell the truth. I think everybody that's suffering physical damage, that's getting hurt, that's taking an unnecessary risk, it's coming from inside the house, Twinkle Toes. All of you self-trained trampoline cowboys that think that your video game moves are supposed to transfer to actual human anatomy in real life, and you find out very quickly that gravity is a harsh mistress. That's the fucking problem with dangerous. I'm just pointing it out that y'all can't fucking stick your thumb in your ass on a first try without dropping somebody on their fucking head.
Well, let's be fair, at least not dropping them on their neck. But
yeah, got to stay away from the neck. Go straight for the head.
Number 7, the cringiest moments of Omega's career, his Ring of Honor run. Kenny Omega and Ring of Honor would seem a perfect fit to some, and while his ROH feud of the year with Cody Rhodes was a huge success, his first one with the company never reached those heights. During Omega's short stint with the company, ROH featured talent like Bryan Danielson, Roderick Strong, and a future Seth Rollins, all of which would be considered dream matches if booked today. While his fans cite youth and bad booking for his failure in Ring of Honor, his critics go back to his refusal to learn, claiming he failed because he stuck to the more spot-heavy style rather than the Ring of Honor style of building matches. But whatever side of the fence you sit, there could be no denying Omega's first Ring of Honor run he showed no sign of the future best bout machine. How much of that do you remember?
I wasn't even there. I think I saw one Ring of Honor show that he was on in like 2007 or 8 or something like, or maybe it was 6, whatever the fuck. And I don't really and I wasn't impressed because honestly, I've said this before, that was the night, I'd heard from a couple of people, oh, that's Kenny Omega. And I watched, and he did the thing where he ran out, shook the ropes, puffed his face, made the funny faces, no basics whatsoever, odd skipping, running into the ropes, the whole thing that he does. And I said, what the fuck is this? He said, well, he's not here a lot. He works in Japan. And I was like, oh, good. And the only time that I was there that was when I was just going to make shots. When I started in 2009, and I've told this story, he was only going to be booked on one show. I think it was Final Battle in New York. And that was Adam Pearce said, oh, we want to bring Kenny Omega. And I had never seen, I don't know if he had done at the time, or I just never seen his matches with the girls and the sex doll and all that shit. I just knew that I'd seen him before at one of the shows, and he didn't really impress me. And okay, if the fans like him, whatever. And then that's when Pearce sent me about a week or 10 days before the Final Battle show, where he'd been booked or advertised or both, sent me the email that he'd sent Pearce with a picture of an ankle with like gangrene, saying that he'd hurt himself and he couldn't come. And then I said, well, number one, I don't care because it wasn't a feature match and I didn't think this guy was worth a shit to begin with. But is that really his ankle, or what did he do to it? Or does he want you to believe that's his ankle? Is this guy nuts? Is he a weirdo? You know him better than I do. What the fuck? And at the time, I think Pearce said, yeah, I think he's a little weird, but that shouldn't be his ankle. It doesn't look right. It looks like he got it out of a medical book. Whatever the fuck. I don't care. And I've told that story, but then it's magnified amongst the people who like old Harpo finger fuck. Well, Cornette's mad because Kenny no-showed a big match in Ring of Honor and then lied about it. And, because he was working in Japan or wrestling in Japan or got an award in Japan or whatever. And that's ridiculous. I wasn't upset the guy didn't come because I didn't think he was worth a shit to begin with. It just registered on me that not only was he also a liar, but a mental case to take a booking, then send a picture of a fucking somebody's gangrenous ankle out of a medical school textbook and say he's hurt. If you're really hurt, then just call Adam Pearce, the booker, and say, I'm fucking hurt. Why did he send a rib photograph? It was, again, better off without this weird indie guy. No heat. And he was never booked again because he wasn't around. We didn't need him. I didn't want him. And nobody gave a shit. But people try to say, oh, well, he no-showed Ring of Honor. Everything that I have seen, both personally and professionally, of Twinkle Toes McFingerbang, the way he talks, the way he acts, the way he thinks, the way he works. If he had called and said, no, I refuse to come to your show, that would have been the best thing he could ever say to me. So, but anyway, so that's the thing. I don't know about his first run in Ring of Honor. That long ago, he obviously was a lot greener than he is now. He obviously hadn't learned anything because he still makes all the same mistakes. But the vehement dislike and the distaste that I have for dipshit comes simply for the fact that he's a joke, wannabe play wrestler that wrestled small children and inanimate objects in competitive matches in front of people. He thinks wrestling is a joke because that's the way he takes it. In his fucking muddled up mind, he thinks everybody wants to wander around in Japan and look at women dressed as schoolgirls and tentacle porn and play video games till their thumbs fall off. He's a joke as a wrestler. He would have been kicked out of any locker room in any territory in the business for being a complete mark for himself and a blithering simpleton when it came to the business. Somebody would have slapped him around on a regular basis because he's a twat and a douchebag. And I have no thought in the future of mitigating my opinion of him because I think about him the same way I think about everybody else that's ever shit on wrestling, tried to expose it, tried to tell everybody it was the shits and fake and phony. I think about him the same way as I do all of them, and actually even worse, because those were people who came out and said at the start, we hate wrestling. We don't want to see it successful. We don't like anybody in it, and we think it's all a bunch of bullshit. That's a lot more honest than a guy who actually not only wants to be in it, but finds marks and billionaire fucking child that wants to pay him a lot of money to be in a business that he still wants to make fun of and make look like shit and take public shits on every chance he gets. Talk about how silly and stupid it's supposed to be. He's making a living, a good living, better than he ever should have because of his talent, because of his money mark friend. He's making a living from the business that he shits on, exposes, makes look phony and fake and stupid, and then wonders why people like me don't like that. Fuck you, you fucking idiot, you curly-haired, twinkle-toed buffoon. It's plain as day to me.
Well, number 6 on the list of his cringiest moments.
Oh, shit, I forgot we're only up to number 6.
The Don Callis and Kenny Omega portrait.
Oh, boy.
Still early into his heel turn and his alliance with Don Callis after the two conspired to screw Jon Moxley out of the AEW World title, fellow Elite members, the Young Bucks, were invited to Kenny's house for a clear the air, as the Bucks were still babyfaces and were confused by Omega's recent actions. In a segment that showed the direction of the character change, having longtime friend Michael Nakazawa as his butler, and not being there in person, and Callis trying to bribe them to leave Omega's life. However, whatever message they were trying to get out of this was lost, as the only thing anyone remembered was that painting. We'll move on from there. There's not too much.
Well, here's one more thing. Michael Naka to fuck off, and fucking Cutlet and the rest of them. What kind of piece of shit do you have to be? It's not being a good friend to get your friends jobs in a company that they have no talent for, no experience with, no nothing, no aptitude, no credentials to have jobs like this, but you get them jobs because they're your friends, and the rest of the people working for that company that want to see it successful, that maybe need a job, maybe need income, they're being held hostage because spots in their company are being held up by school friends of the EVPs instead of people that would actually serve a purpose. I don't know. You think, is that being professional? Is that being a good EVP? Is that fiduciary responsibility?
I don't think it is.
Just since you brought up one of the Stooges.
No, and look, they all have their Stooges. You know, Jericho, we've talked about Jericho's play right now. I just read Luther's now an agent behind the scenes. Luther! So everyone gets their friends jobs and everyone tries to get them hooked up.
You know what? I ran my own wrestling promotion. Not one time did I try to book Weasel Dooley to do anything. One of my oldest and dearest friends, but that was not his department.
It's really his loss. I mean, if you had come around today, Weasel Dooley could have been executive vice president of some made-up division. But Jim, number 5, the cringiest moments, cosplay wrestling. Omega as well as being one of the top names in wrestling, is an avid gamer with a separate following on his gaming channels, and his social media is dedicated to both industries. As a gamer, Omega has thrown himself into the culture, including incorporating cosplay into his wrestling. While some tributes to games or characters in that demographic for his big match entrances have been truly memorable and awe-inspiring, that isn't always the case.
Awe-inspiring?
According to this article here, the most notable examples are wrestling a match as Princess Jasmine from Aladdin while in Japan, and the AEW Ghostbusters skit, where him and the Elite came out in costumes that looked like they had been ordered off a cheap knockoff website. Cosplay wrestling, Jim.
Well, that's their area of expertise. Every time they get in the ring and put tights and boots on, they're cosplaying. They're dressing up like something they're not. Wrestlers. They pretend to be wrestlers, and that's his thing. Oh, the genie outfit, those pictures and that video looks real good on Twitter by the star of Sissy Boy Slap Fight. He's constantly going out trying to make a fucking spectacle of himself in a negative way to appeal to. I don't know who this appeals to. Who does it appeal to see a supposed grown adult male professional wrestler have a match while dressed up like a fucking genie from Aladdin? Who the fuck does it appeal to have a supposed grown adult man have a competitive match with a blow-up sex doll? How does it who is the audience for a grown adult man having a competitive match with a 6-year-old girl?
Well, you've knocked a few more off this list.
Again, who is the audience for this? A bunch of weirdos in Japan that this guy fetishizes. I don't even think the standard Japanese citizen, who have nothing against the Japanese people, as I've said before, they're very fine, educated, industrious, honest, hardworking, and polite people. But there's a subset of them that likes even weirder shit than the subset of people like here in this country. And part of it is this whole thing that Olivier has wrapped himself up in, and it's holding the wrestling business hostage with his foolery. And he's a piece of shit, and I don't like him. I'm never going to like him. And I got news for you. If something horrible was to happen to him, I probably wouldn't cry. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't threaten it. I'm not even going to publicly wish for it, but I can't say I would be brokenhearted. Fuck.
Well, you hit on number 4 on the list, wrestling a blow-up doll, so I'll save you the description there.
Yeah.
Number 3 on the list, his involvement with Chasen Rants.
Oh, and yes, he does have a circle of social friends that seem to like the schoolgirls too.
Well,
funnily enough.
I don't know about his circle of friends, but according to this, Chasen Rants is an American wrestler and was booked on a CEO and New Japan Pro Wrestling cross-promotion by Kenny Omega. Omega received backlash after fans pointed out Rants was a convicted pedophile who was on the sex offenders registry. Omega apologized to the fans, saying he never knew, but wouldn't be used on any show he was booking from then on.
Look at here. Everybody in the business heard about that when it happened. And I'm going to say either I was still in TNA at the time or was in Florida at some point when the local guys in Florida were talking about it, but it was in the Observer. It was in every newsletter. This was not a secretive thing way in this guy's past. And I don't know what the exact charges were, but the fact that nobody knew anything about this or that Twinkle Toes could act like he didn't know anything about it is ridiculous, because who else is named Chasen? How could that be anybody else?
It's such a dumb name, but let me continue on because where we've just finished, it says he said he would never book him again. I'll pick it up. Unfortunately, this hasn't played out. While Omega has been true to his word and never booked him on a show, on multiple occasions and in multiple promotions, Omega would lease Rance's wrestling ring for shows, including the Sting and Darby Allin versus Team Taz cinematic match on an AEW pay-per-view.
Well, there you go.
Number 2, the exploding barbed wire death match. We don't really have to go through that. And actually, of all the cringy things on the list, I don't blame Omega for that at all.
No, we blame the company for biting off more than they could chew, as Mama Cornette used to say. They couldn't do it. Hey, TNA botched the electrified cage. AEW thought they were going to have a fucking explosive ring and do any better.
Well, thank God Eddie Kingston was there to save Moxley. But number 1 on the list, the 8 cringiest moments in Kenny Omega's career, wrestling a child in Stardom. Kenny Omega's list of opponents is a veritable who's who of 21st century wrestling on both sides of the Pacific Ocean.
Actually, I would term it a veritable who's that of pro wrestling, but nevertheless.
One opponent you won't see on a who's who is Haruka, a 9-year-old girl. The match happened in Japanese promotion Stardom in 2011.
And by the way, this is another thing. Uncle Dave legitimately reports the activities in Stardom like it's a goddamn legitimate wrestling promotion. Women and blow-up dolls.
For the record, I don't know how much of this still takes place in Stardom. I'm going to ask, because I actually thought they were doing serious women's wrestling now, but I don't know, again.
Well, wait a minute. Isn't that like government intelligence, jumbo shrimp? It's mutually exclusive. Serious women's wrestling, but go ahead.
Oh, come on. Well, let me go back to this. There can be no denying that Omega and Haruka had a tidy little competitive match, highlighting Omega's ability to get a good match out of anyone.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
However, for many of the...
He can't get a good match out of himself. You know what? I bet you somebody had to teach him how to jack off.
Maybe Don Callis.
Well, the invisible hand. Now it all becomes clear. It all becomes clear.
All right, well, let me finish this off. However, for many, that's what Don Callis said. Now let's go back to this article. However, for many of the veterans, this was the genesis of the heat with Omega. I'm happy that this match exposed the inner workings of wrestling in a way never before seen.
Yeah, so at least that article had a happy ending.
Well, Jim, perhaps you're a longtime wrestling fan. Perhaps you're an American wrestling fan who in 2011 traveled to Japan to live out your lifelong fantasy of seeing Japanese wrestling live and in person, and you happened to walk into Korakuen Hall on the wrong night, and you saw Kenny Omega wrestling a doll, wrestling a young girl, sticking his fingers in someone's ass. I don't know what was going on over there or how it was allowed, but maybe you want to sue.
Or maybe you do. And if you do want to sue, I know who should sue for you.
Oh. And I played it early, so I'll do it again, folks.
I was trying to figure out how to get out of that.
I did it again. Hold on.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
That's right. He will sue you know who for you if you need to sue.
That's right.
That's right. And I'll tell you, he's been making news, too, has our friend Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. I refer everyone to a recent article. Is there a date on this? This was October the 5th. It's recent, last week. In the Register Herald, there in West Virginia. I don't know what city. It's register-herald.com. You can find this, but West Virginia legislators say a recent federal civil action lawsuit regarding the conditions and treatment of inmates at a jail in Raleigh County is shining a light on the state's aging correctional facilities, which are also facing critical staffing shortages. And legislatures, this is important, legislators are also calling into question a recent investigation conducted internally by the state of West Virginia into some of the conditions alleged in the lawsuit at the Southern Regional Jail in Raleigh County. By the way, Raleigh County is where Beckley, West Virginia is located at. I've been sued there, but not by Stephen P. New, or elsewise I'd be a broke dick dog right now. Anyway, the report released in late April stated that allegations that inmates were deprived of clean water and food, clothing, and mattresses and medical care were false. That's what their report says, the internal state report. But a lot of other people saying they want to get to the bottom of this because there were alarming allegations made in the lawsuit filed by our friend Stephen P. New, which include everything from the beating of inmates by correctional officers to broken toilets infested with maggots. And like we've said before, if you can't even be safe when you're in jail these days, what's this country coming to? But according to the complaint that's been filed, inmates housed at that facility are forced to live in filthy, unsanitary, and dangerous conditions and are denied cleaning supplies to remedy said conditions. Black mold is present in inmate cells, inmate showers, air vents, and grows on the clothing of the inmates. Plumbing is a major issue, described in the complaint as so inadequate and in such a state of disrepair as to constitute a serious threat to the physical and mental well-being of the prisoners. No running water, constantly running water, broken sinks, toilets infested with bugs. And this is not just limited to that one facility. Apparently, there's other jails in the state. And now a bunch of people are hopping on this because this suit has been filed by our friend Stephen. And as well, West Virginia Governor Jim Justice is trying to get to the bottom of things. But I want to read one thing to you. Delegate, I believe, a DEL period. Brandon Steele, he's an elected official in West Virginia. I believe delegate would be to the House of Representatives, right? I believe that's his title. But they're saying, or he's saying, those jails were designed at a time that the opioid crisis didn't exist. They were designed in 1990 through 96. And now these jails, because of the opioid crisis of the last 30 years, are overcrowded at 2 and 3 times the amount of people that they were built to house, which tells me that already Stephen P. New has been suing on behalf of the opioid-addicted babies and on behalf of the people that were the pregnant women and the other people that were addicted to opioids because of the misrepresentation of some of the pharmaceutical companies. Well, this is a part to play also because all these people are in jail because of the opioid crisis that was foisted upon them. It says the regional jails were not created as a long-term facility. It was a short-term facility for misdemeanors and folks that are pretrial felons that couldn't make bond. But now they're jammed over there because of the opioid crisis and the people that are addicted and have the things they have to do because of that addiction. But listen to this, one more quote, Brian, that I've found here, according to Mr. Steele, the elected representative there in West Virginia. In cases like this, Attorney Stephen New has a track record of exposing problems like this and doing it in a manner that is on the up and up. I have no reason to doubt the veracity of what Steve New has put out there. So even the elected officials that are getting called on the carpet by Stephen P. New and the minions at newlawoffice.com, they still say, well, he's got a track record of exposing problems like this, and he does it in a manner that's on the up and up. So if you want somebody to expose you and do it in a manner that's on the up and up, folks, call the law offices of Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. He's all over the country like Sherwin-Williams, covering the world, not just in West Virginia. You can be almost anywhere. If he can't do it, by gum, he'll have it done. Contact him today, especially if you find yourself in jail in Raleigh County, West Virginia.